evening. Welcome to another episode of Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you are joining me on ZIZ live on Facebook, on YouTube, and on radio. As usual, you spend your Tuesday nights just for an hour with me, and I'm happy to have you here again with me another week. As is customary, I'm going to give you a few minutes to gather your troops, let everybody know that Pleasure Pulse is live, and then when we come back, we'll jump straight into the conversation. So, see you soon. Welcome back to Pleasure Pulse. I'm your host, Roma Richardson, and you're tuned in to ZIZ. This evening, I'm excited to have this conversation tonight. It's related to a topic that doesn't have much to do with me, but I'm still excited to have it. And I'm happy to introduce my guest. I'll have my guest introduce herself to you all. She's a first timer on the show, and I'm welcome.
Thank you, Roma. Good night to everyone, all the YouTubers, all those listening by radio. It is a pleasure for me to be here this evening. I am Denise Caesar, Kittitian by birth. I am also a sales executive in St. Kitts. I am an author, Making Married Life Easy. I am also a coach. My business is called Customized Coaching and Mentoring Services, where we mentor couples as well as young converts, giving them direction into their gifts, their calling God, and how to actually be victorious in this life.
Oh, well.
I'm very, very happy to be here tonight.
Thank you.
Discussing marriage. Thank
you for joining me on this show. I said it's not a topic that I'm very marriage that I'm very familiar with, so I will be learning, as I usually am, alongside the listeners, and I'm really happy that you reached out and that you also accepted the invitation to come on the show. So you have your book here.
Yes.
Give us a synopsis of what's in the book, what readers can expect, and of course tell people where they can find it.
Okay, this book was inspired by God, and it was inspired by Him because of the lies and the myths that's out there about marriage being hard. And what I found is that so many young people would say they don't want to get married because of, so many divorces, so many challenges within relationships, how they might have seen their mom, their dad treat one another. And so it's really to dispel the myth that marriage is not hard. Marriage will work for you if you work for it. So this book, Making Married Life Easy, is intended to provide you with knowledge, information, life experiences, really the tools that will enable you to have a successful married life. It contains information before marriage, during marriage, and, God forbid, after marriage.
Okay.
You can find the book at Amazon and also locally in stores as well, or the local bookstores in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Okay, all right. So you shared a few quotes from your book, and on this show, this is a sexual health, sexual education show, and one of the things that I continue and guests continue to talk about as well is communication.
Yes.
And you say in your book that communication is the water that keeps the marriage hydrated.
Yes.
How does communication play a role in maintaining a healthy sexual relationship within a marriage, and a healthy relationship more broadly within the marriage? Because of course, it's not that you put on the ring or you get married and then everything magically improves or even worsens, right? So what's the role that communication plays in a healthy relationship and marriage?
Great question, and it is a perfect place to start. I would like to read just a portion from my book. All right. It says, your relationship must be watered and fed throughout the journey of the marriage. Communication is the water that keeps the marriage hydrated. What happens to you if you do not drink water? And I'm reading from page 86. It says, the body will not function the way it needs to. You will experience dryness, both internally and externally. Lack of water will produce pains such as headaches, constipation. Similarly, when communication is not present, it causes dryness within the marriage. This affects intimacy. It affects decision making. It generates pain through rejection, abandonment, and loneliness. Little communication or a lack of communication will also create constipation. This means that it would be a struggle to accomplish your goals and family objectives together. It would be a struggle to speak about finances or other important matters that needs to be addressed. When matters are not addressed within the body, these can develop into greater and even more severe problems. It is the same with our relationships. Issues must be dealt with before they spiral out of control and damage the entire marriage. So your question, Roma, on communication and the part that it plays in sexual relationship within a marriage, a healthy marriage. Now, marriages are diverse because we all are diverse. There are no two marriages that's the same, no couple that's the same. And sometimes as human, especially I can say women, we like to compare ourselves to relationships, to other relationships. And so communication between your partner has to be within the bonds of marriage. What does healthy look to you? How does that look to you? What does that mean when you say I have a healthy sexual relationship within my marriage? It has to be unique to those two individuals that are within the bonds of marriage. Communication. You have to be able to express yourself to your partner. What are my needs? What does it mean for me to be healthy sexually in this relationship? And so we get into marriage, and for some, maybe before marriage, you would have been intimate with your spouse, maybe having intercourse 5 times a week.
A day.
A day. A day, right? And then you get married, and then things change, right? For a number of reasons.
Yeah.
But that must be communicated with your spouse. Because if it's not communicated, that can cause dryness. It can cause frustration. It can cause bitterness. It can cause infidelity, right? It can cause so many negative impacts just by not communicating. So it must be effective between yourself and your partner, and it must be open. Some people, some persons are afraid to speak about certain things within their marriage.
Yeah.
And it can be as a result of maybe the upbringing, their experiences, what they have been exposed to, maybe their trauma that they would have experienced in life. These things can contribute to, whether male or female, holding back and not being able to communicate fluently or effectively with their partner. And this for sure can cause an impact negatively within the marriage.
Yeah. I appreciate that response a lot. Also because I was just talking to my partner on the phone, and we were essentially talking about communication and how framing the communication is important, because you also mentioned effective communication. So communication is one thing. Effective communication is another thing. You know, you want as much as possible, I think, to speak in a way that the other person can understand and receive what you're saying. You know, framing things in positive ways if possible, as opposed to negative ways. So like we were talking about wanting, so someone expresses this is something I would like more of, as
That's
opposed
right.
to saying you don't do this, you don't do
That's
that,
right.
you don't
Then
that.
point
So
the finger.
right, so things like that, and it all, I think, also connects to healthy sexual relationships, as it connects to just broader communication.
Yeah,
So
and just to
yeah.
interject as well, because male and female communicates differently. All right? And, in one of the chapters in my book, I speak about men being from Mars and women from Venus. And the man has to go to Venus to understand the culture of Venus. How do they communicate? How do I communicate with this wife that I say I'm bringing into my space? How do I communicate effectively with that person? Right? So understanding each other mode of communication is critical.
Yeah.
Critical to avoid arguments and bitterness and strife and just contention.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how many people separate over communication. Simple communication.
Yeah, I hear that. I mean, I don't know the statistics, but I hear it for sure.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of times, even in the movies that you watch or the videos that you see online, sometimes the issues boil down to communication.
Miscommunication.
Yeah. Okay. This is a different topic, but also related to married life. What are some strategies for keeping intimacy alive in a long-term marriage? I think communication
Yes.
is one thing, but what are some others?
Okay. So when we talk of intimacy, and we like to say intimacy, right? It speaks about emotional closeness, emotional openness, transparency, being able to be vulnerable with your partner, right? That is really intimacy. And many relationships struggle with intimacy because you have a male and you have a female. And as females, we are more emotional than males. We show our emotions more. We express ourselves more. But when it comes to the male, a lot of times they are more internal. They keep back a lot of stuff, right? And it can be because of upbringing, right? Even in our society, the men are trained to be tough.
Right.
Don't cry. Don't ask for forgiveness. Don't
Or
do this.
help.
Or help, right? So they come with this facade as if they're so tough, and then they bring that into the marriage where the wife is looking for intimacy. She's looking for him to be open, for him to empathize with her, whatever she's going through. But then he has this mentality and this, how do you break that? Right? So he must be willing to transform his way of thinking towards the female, because we're now trying to meet each other like this, and we are coming from two different backgrounds, right? Two different belief systems, experiences are different, everything is different, and we're now merging into this marriage. So it takes two to really get intimate. But if one is willing and the other is not, that's a challenge. Now, intimacy is something that can be learned, right? A man can learn how to open up to his wife, but he must be willing to. He must want to. He must see the benefits of being intimate with the wife. What benefits would I get if I really try to improve on my intimacy towards her? What are the benefits? And we can say for sure more sex, right? Yeah, more sex. Right? Because the woman is looking for that closeness, but she's not just looking for sex. Before you get to the sex part, what are you doing to get her there? The intimacy part, right? Just sometimes a phone call. Sometimes just sending a rose. It doesn't have to be a birthday or anniversary. Right? What is a special thing that you can do that will just spark her day? And then when she reaches home, she's ready. She's ready for you because you just sparked her. She's prepared just by a little kindness. Right? So intimacy is extremely, extremely important. And sometimes after marriage, we find that the dating process ceases.
Okay.
Right? The couple no longer go out on dates. They no longer do fun things together. They get home, they want to just stay on the couch, watch TV, eat popcorn, eat pizza, and then the intimacy goes out the door. So you have to be intentional when it comes to intimacy within a marriage. Intentional, what it is that I want from this marriage. And if it's intimacy, it has to be at the top of the list. What can I do to ensure that that spark stays, right? And as I say, you can do things. You can go to exercise together, go on dates frequently, at least once a week. You can go to the beach, you can do walks, you can give a present, you can just dress up, you can do fun things, right? So different things to do throughout the day, throughout the weeks, to just keep the spark alive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm taking from that the key thing underlying those strategies is intentionality. So being intentional about that as a goal or that as an objective. So just not assuming that intimacy will remain or will happen, but actually working to make it happen and to maintain it after it happens.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it takes two, because sometimes if the wife feels as if she's the one always coming up with the plans, let's do this, let's do that, what is the man doing?
Yeah.
So I'm appealing to men that are watching.
Please.
Women need you to step up. Men that are looking, the wives need you to step up. If you don't know what to do, go on YouTube.
Yeah, Google it. There's so many things.
Yeah, get something, surprise her. Surprise her for a month. Just surprise her. You know what I'm saying? Women are tired of doing all of the work. So men, I'm speaking to you. Step up.
Okay, let's take a break there. And this break is for people in relationships, particularly men, to do some Googling, some YouTubing of what they can do to help, maintain and bring back the intimacy in their relationship. So we will take a break and then we will come back. Remember, don't forget to Google. We are back. That was maybe not enough time for you to do all of your research, but you of course have time beyond the show, and I would encourage you to send a link to your friends, those in marriages, those thinking about getting married, those in long-term relationships, those who maybe are not yet in a relationship but have marriage in mind as an eventual goal. So we're having a really interesting conversation about marriage and how you can maintain intimacy, communication, how you can make marriage easy for you. So let's get into trust, because trust is such, next to communication, and communication helps with trust, trust helps with communication. But tell me, specifically, how does trust affect a successful relationship within a marriage, specifically a sexual relationship?
Okay, that's a very, very good question. Trust. So I will describe trust as a gate, right? So trust is a gate where you can either let someone in or you can close them out. Trust. Now, when the gate is closed, that means that your heart is closed, right? The trust has been betrayed in some way. Right? And so your heart is closed to your partner. You're still having sex, you're still doing your housework, you're still dealing with the children, but your heart is closed off from your partner. And so that affects the level of intimacy that you can have sexually. So even though you're having sex with your partner, you're not open because the gate of trust is closed, right? Intimacy takes openness. And when you are intimate with your partner, there cannot or there should not be any barriers, right? You shouldn't have a thought, I wonder if he's cheating or she's cheating. I wonder what about that phone call. I wonder about that receipt. No, you can't, because you would not be enjoying the intimacy, the sex 100%. You will be holding back. Your heart will be closed off. When we think of trust in a relationship or a marriage, why it is so important is because you want to enjoy your partner. right? You do not want to be in a relationship where there is fear, where there seems to be question marks, uncertainties about this man or this woman, right? That would create anxiety, right? That would create stress, right? That would create maybe you having to now go and talk to your friends about what's happening within your marriage. So that's an open door that you're now inviting others into your space, right? We have to be mindful that when trust is betrayed, you don't just leave it as that. It has to be dealt with. If you want to foster greater intimacy, and if you would like your relationship to grow, you have to deal with the trust issues. And sometimes the trust issues has nothing to do with your partner.
Yeah.
Sometimes it has to do with the fact that you would have been in a bad experience before. You experienced something and then you're now bringing that baggage into the relationship, into the marriage, without having dealt with that situation.
Yeah.
That can create chaos.
Yeah. So sometimes it's like no matter what your partner does or doesn't do, like you still have those underlying issues. I wonder if you could tell folks listening how they actually deal with those trust issues.
So I would say you should have a conversation, right? Have a conversation with your spouse. And this might not always be easy because your spouse has to be willing to open up to you, to let you know what has triggered this trust issue. Tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your past relationship, right? And then it might even include you going to a therapist, right, to get those issues resolved because there might have been deep-bedded issues from childhood, right? So I would suggest that, one, speak to your partner, right? And beyond that, therapy.
Yeah.
Beyond that, get therapy. And therapy is not a bad word.
It's a good word.
It is a good word because it brings help. It brings illumination, right? It helps you to resolve issues that you cannot resolve yourself within the marriage. And so you're going to an expert who can assist you to build instead of breaking your relationship apart.
Would you recommend the same steps or the same responses if it is maybe your, or if it was your partner maybe who broke that trust? Like let's say there was infidelity, or sometimes it's not even infidelity, sometimes it's, I mean, if we're talking about successful sexual relationship, but sometimes it could be something as simple as, you know, not feeling listened to by your partner, or like you've repeatedly asked someone, you know, or requested something, you know, you've talked to somebody about what your desires, and there seems to be not necessarily a prioritization of those things. If your partner is the one who has broken that trust, would you recommend the same steps?
I would, but in addition to those steps, your spouse, must be willing to understand that there are going to be some changes within the relationship. For example, if he maybe was cheating, right? You may need access to his phone, right? You may need to go through his phone now and then to feel comfortable that you can now trust this guy, right? You may need to say, well, you know, if you're going to a function, I'm coming, right? You may need to put boundaries because it's protecting your heart until you can then open up to fully trust him again. So he should be willing that, you know, the privileges that were there before, they're no longer there. We have to now work through them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And as we talk about some of these things about infidelity, because I know earlier, you know, we discussed how communication or differences in desires and needs and stuff might lead to things like infidelity. How do couples actually work through those differences in sexual desires and preferences, or maybe even differences in libido?
Okay. That's a deep question, right? Preferences. Repeat the question for me.
Yeah, how do couples navigate differences?
Differences.
So I want one thing, you want something else. How do we meet in the middle? What do we do in
Good
a
question.
case like that?
Okay, and even as I spoke about the sexual drive between both partners, yeah, this is something that is common, I would say, because as I said before, two different individuals coming together. You have past experiences, you have different sexual desires, preferences, and how do you now bring both together so that both of you are fulfilled in the marriage? Now, marriage was designed because we cannot fulfill all of our needs on our own. And so I will fulfill my partner's needs, and he will then fulfill my needs. Both of us are now satisfied, right? Now we have a marriage where, I'll just use the man, the man needs to ensure that he is fulfilled, right? And he can care less what happened to the woman.
Yeah.
That is selfish. That is selfish, right?
Preach.
Because the man and the woman has to both fulfill each other's needs. Otherwise, somebody is going to be resentful in the marriage, unhappy in the marriage, right? And we do not want to have those situations occurring. Because we are also not at the same age when we got married at first. Our bodies are changing. Our sexual desires are changing. Our positions might even change. The positions that you once enjoyed, you know, with your spouse,
Yeah.
that might also change.
Right. Your knees get older, you know, this limb ain't working as it used to, the flexibility decrease,
Right.
all kinds of things. Yeah.
Right. So it is important to have a conversation with your mate about these issues. It's not always easy, right? Because some persons, and I'm sorry to be pulling at the men, I'm sorry, no offense, men, I'm sorry. But sometimes men are not as easy or to open up to say what's going on internally. So the woman might say, well, and you know what? Let me say this before I say that. It is important to ensure that as we are communicating with our spouse, our preferences, our desires, that it is done in a way that is graceful, should not bring shame or rejection, right? It should not make your partner feel less than, right? Do it in a loving way, right? Say, I would prefer this because of this reason. Now, if you're timid about it, maybe not sure how to express it, you can then include your partner. You can say, well, let's watch this documentary together.
Yeah.
Right? And then during the documentary, you can say, well, you know, this is what's happening to me right now. You know, what do you think? You can make it, you know, inclusive and fun, right? So that it doesn't feel awkward. It doesn't feel awkward. It needs to feel as if it's flowing and that he's okay to also speak about his issues, his challenges. Because if both of you are going all together, he's experiencing things too. But maybe he's not sharing, maybe he don't want to say for whatever reason. So find that comfortable spot with your partner to discuss these, and they are mature. And that's why marriage is for mature people. Have to be mature to speak about all of these issues or challenges within the marriage.
What do you mean by mature? Do you mean mature in age, or do you mean mature mindset?
The mindset.
And tell us what a mature
The
person
mindset.
is.
Yeah, the mindset, and knowing that marriage is not an agreement, it's a covenant. You're going into covenant with this person for life. You, the person, and God in the middle, right? So it's not to be taken lightly.
So it's not a business agreement.
It's not a transaction, no.
As people say.
It's not to get married because
It's not
you
just a
want your
legal
papers.
document.
No.
Okay.
No. It's binding. And we have to be able to treat our marriage with that respect. Give it that respect, right? And so when we understand the purpose of marriage, why I'm getting married, and the fact that I just can't get up and marry somebody, I have to understand who this person is. Knowledge of your spouse, because this is the person you intend to spend the rest of your life with. So don't rush through the process. You know, sometimes when we're single, we want to get married. And then when we're married, we want to go back single. right? But use your singleness for those that are still single and maybe getting frustrated of the situation. Use your singleness, the period when you're single, to what? Look after yourself, advance yourself, right? Travel, do those things that you need to do, because when you get husband sometimes, or wife, or children,
Yeah.
we can't do a lot of those things, right? So don't complain about being single and wanting to get married, but maximize the time that you have as you're single to do all that you can do within that time.
As you were talking earlier about, going through people's evolution in relationships, what came to mind for me is I saw this video once. It was someone saying essentially that being in a long-term relationship is like witnessing 100 rebirths or evolutions of the partner. And so that just came to mind as evidence of the fact that in relationships you really do have to be in it for the long haul and be witness to and comfortable with the ways that people might change, and hopefully it changes, expanding for the better and not necessarily for the worse, but it's still like a lifelong commitment to that person in all of their different versions, especially. So I really appreciated that reminder.
Yeah, and sometimes people would say, well, we just grew apart.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
You tell me, I don't know.
We just grew apart because you don't expect the person that you married 50 years ago to stay
be the same.
Exactly, right? And for the person who's saying, well, we just drifted apart, they drifted apart too, because they're changing. But we have to now come together.
Yeah, how do you drift together?
Change.
Yeah.
Intimacy. So the intimacy would have been lost. When there's no intimacy, there's no communication.
Yeah.
There's dryness in the relationship. It's broken. Something could be so dry that you could just break it in two.
Yeah, and the openness, I think, too. You mentioned openness to that evolution and to those changes. And I think it's when you're intimate, when you have that closeness, you are better able to witness and feel part of those changes that your partners are going through, instead of feeling like you're on the outside watching it happen. Yeah. Wow. So I can pick up something, pick up some things about my. Okay, I'm prepared.
You're getting the
Thank you. Okay, so we are a few minutes away from the end of this show, but I have two more questions. We have like 20 minutes left, so that's a good chunk of time. But how can couples ensure that they have consent? Like I mentioned, this is a sexual health, sexual education program centered on consent and communication, especially. So everything we talk about, kind of assumes or implies consent, and I think that is also clear in the conversation that we are having today, where you want to have communication, like intimacy. All of those things can be broken if there's no consent and safety and security and all of those things. So how can couples ensure they have consent and mutual respect in their sexual relationship in a marriage? Because I think sometimes people think too, and our laws have to evolve to match the reality of current relationships and to distance itself from the historical view that like men owned women and things like that. So it doesn't mean that, once you're married, suddenly
no
people belong to people. But so how can couples ensure they have consent and mutual respect in their marriages?
So I would say before marriage there is dating, courting, right?
Which we don't really do here. So maybe that's another conversation.
We have to look at behavior of your potential spouse. How is that person treating me as an individual? Do I feel respected? Not just me, but how are they treating my parents, my siblings, those that they come in contact with? How are they speaking to them? How are they addressing them? What are they saying behind their backs, right? Because that would tell what sort of person I am going to be getting married to. Now, someone can also pretend very well, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're in a relationship where the man feels as if the woman is the property of himself, or the woman feels as if this is my property, that's an issue. We are nobody's property, right? We are human beings. We have our own sense of style. We have our own will. We have our own desires. When a man forces himself on a woman because he thinks that this is my wife, you know, I give you this ring, you're married to me, and I can do whatever. No. Where is the respect? And so a woman has to be able to stand on her feet and demand the respect from this man, right? No, it starts before marriage. It has to start before marriage, right? Now, if the man or the woman would have been hiding such behavior, right, and you recognize that this is what I'm into, you have to seek help, right? Because a lot of times it is beyond us, right? And we stay and we are in these abusive relationships where the man or the woman feel as if they own each other. And you have a mind of your own when that happens. It's like you're constantly in fear, right? What type of marriage is that? Yet people are suffering, right? People are suffering in silence. And where do they go, right? Sometimes they go to a church and they don't get the aids, they don't get their help, their assistance. Sometimes they go to maybe governments or institutions, and where do they really go for help, right? But people are out there in marriages who are suffering because they're being treated as property in 2024.
Yeah.
Right, but that ought not to be. So seek help if you're out there. Seek somebody that you can trust, somebody that is confidential, and get out. Sometimes the individual can be helped if they really want to be helped, right? Because there's a number of reasons why somebody would take another human being as a property. Maybe that is how they saw their parents treated, right? Maybe it is something that happened in their childhood and they said, well, I'm going to not allow anybody to rule me. You know, different things, different scenario, but whatever the case is, seek help because that should not be your portion.
Yeah. And I think for cases that, and I'm going to call those like extreme cases, even if they might be more common than we know, because I don't have any statistics, but you know, you hear people talk about relationships and it's clear that violence for them is a very like normal thing and commonplace, and you know, folks think that violence is just acceptable within, you know, one person throw a hand, the other person throw a hand, and things like that. But I think you know, a few steps, well, a couple steps before that extreme, because we aren't really talking about or taught about consent generally, like in our society. And so there are, I think something I was reading the other day about boys essentially talking about consent and the things that they actually and genuinely did not know violated consent. Like they did not know it was not okay to do. They weren't taught, right? So so when we're talking about ensuring, you know, learning consent, teaching consent to your partner perhaps, and things like that, it's about communication, right? It's about asking, like, is this okay? You know, and you know, you keep saying, you know, you can make things fun, so it doesn't have to be is this okay in those words, as I say, because that sounds kind of dry and not interesting or sexy at all. But you know, there are different ways that you can ask for permission, but consent is essentially asking for permission, which shows that you don't believe that somebody else is your property, and you want to ensure that they are fully agreeing and comfortable to what you're proposing.
If I could add, Roma, I'm thinking about a couple. And in a relationship, in a marriage, you know, the man wants to have sex with the woman, but the woman, maybe she doesn't want to, she doesn't feel like it or whatever the case is. Some men will force her, right? But when you find a man who can say, okay, I understand, right? Maybe tomorrow. Right? But then if the woman is going to be saying that every night, I have a headache, I have a bellyache. I'm not well every night. Something else.
Yeah, you have to talk about
Something
what's
else is wrong,
happening.
right?
Hey, babe, I
Something
realize
else is wrong.
what's going on,
Yeah.
and it could be something with intimacy. It could be something with communication. It could be, every day I have to ask you to wash the dishes, and I feel
Yeah.
like you could volunteer more, take it upon yourself
That's right.
more. I'm so exhausted from doing all of this household
Yeah,
work
yeah,
and
so-
looking after the children. Like, it's so many things, and I think it warrants, especially, hey babe, let's talk about what's going on here, especially if you're used to have, an
Yeah.
active sex life and things have changed.
But it is certainly okay to say no.
Absolutely.
It is okay to say no in a marriage. It's okay to say no for sex. And not every night, right? But no with the understanding. You have to say why. Babe, I'm really, really tired. He might be asking it at 9 o'clock in the night. What about 3 o'clock in the morning? Wake me up at 3 o'clock. Right? Work with him.
Work around
Right?
it.
Because he have needs and you're there to fulfill his needs, mind you. Right? And you have needs too and you like him to fulfill your needs. But communication again. Discuss it. See what's good. See what's compatible for both of you.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Okay. And final question, because I think we are also like hinting at some of these things, so let's maybe address them explicitly, or maybe I kind of segued into it. So let's put them out there. Things like stress, children, work. They are like all of these
Life.
like life, just life. Not even necessarily life transitions, but sometimes it's a major life transition, but like children, like having children, that's a major life transition. But stress, children, work, these are things that people deal with daily. How do they affect a couple's sexual relationship after marriage? And what can people do to to cope with them?
Yeah, definitely stress, children, and work. And we can categorize work and stress maybe, the same thing.
Because work is stress.
Yeah, it can be stressful at times. And children, an addition into the family, a bundle of joy into the family.
And a bundle
then
of
what
stress.
happens? And then what happens? Reality. Getting up, feed, maybe every third hour, body tired, not getting enough rest. The mommy is cranky. They have this to do in the house and that to do in the house. The body is exhausted. And then in the night, they can't do anything intimately with their husband because they're so tired. Right? And this is the reality of a lot of mothers who are struggling, right? Because of, this newborn that they have to care for. And it's a challenge because they're now divided between caring for the newborn and also taking care of their partner's needs and the home as well. How do you balance? It's about striking that balance. And sometimes women feel like super women.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, they have to do everything.
Like they have to do everything. Ask for help from your partner, right? And not just put it out there that I need help, you're not helping to do nothing. Be specific. Babes, I would like you to help me to wash the dishes in the morning. I would like to take a nap around this time. Can you do this? Can you do that? Be specific. If necessary, because we're dealing with men and men are different to women, you may have to write a list for the man. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You may need to put times for him to complete them.
It's not like another set of work by yourself.
Right? Because you would like it to get accomplished.
Okay,
right?
yes.
Not like, what you said to do again? Forget you not. No, put it down on paper so that the men can be a help. Because I believe that the men out there want to help their wife. But a lot of times they just don't know what to do.
Right.
All they're hearing is, I'm tired, you're not helping, but you're not saying what. Be specific. Tell the man how he can make your burden easier. Because when he make your burden easy, you now have time for intimacy. Right? So marriages suffer because the woman is taking all for time to nurture the child. But before the child was there was a man and a woman.
Yeah.
Right? And so you have to ensure that your relationship doesn't suffer. You have to strike a balance. And if that means bringing in a nanny once a week or somebody to clean the house, do what you have to do, but you have to maintain your relationship so that at the end of the day, you have your child, but your man or your woman walks away. No. You have to strike the balance. Right? And that happens to work as well. You can't work all the time. What's important? What's priority? Is family priority? Make your family, make your wife, your husband, your home a priority. Right? Sometimes we take it for granted that they're going to always be there. But no, show them that they are a priority and make them number one. Male and female. Treasure your wife, treasure your husband. Right? And of course, when the child comes along, it comes into a loving relationship. Understanding what it is to take care of one another. Because the foundation is already laid.
That was just like, I think, a really good way to end. And I had a question, a burning question, which is, I think, very kind of trivial in that it is a conversation that is happening casually in different spaces, mostly online. But it is what came to mind as you were talking, which is, who comes first? Like, is it your partner, or is it, do you put your child first in a family? And maybe we can talk about that after, unless you want. But, you know, it's a question that people have, and I think, like, as you talked about, you know, the stresses of family, of children, of maintaining that balance and that partnership, and the, you know, the need for the child to come into a loving and stable home. It's like, how do you maintain that balance? Like, do you prioritize your marriage over the children, which is not, you know, to say that your children are not a priority, but yeah, like, what do you, if you had to rank them, like, what should come first, in your opinion?
If I had to rank, I would say the marriage comes first, because you need that foundation. Once that foundation is there, the child is taken care of.
Yeah.
Once the needs of both the husband and the wife are met, the child is taken care of. Right? So sometimes we put a lot of emphasis on the child, and then the relationship goes sour.
Yeah.
Right? And then the child grows up, go on their own. Right? So no, ensure that you are solid in your relationship, because that would enable the child to thrive as well and understand what it is to have a fruitful marriage.
Okay, also a good place, a good place to end. But I wanted to ask you if you had any final words to wrap up tonight's conversation. And of course, remind folks where they can get your book and
my book release.
Yes, and you wanted to do a reveal.
Yes.
And all of that. So, any final words?
So tonight was very, very interesting. Great conversation. And grateful for the opportunity tonight to speak about my book, Making Married Life Easy. Check it on Amazon and also local bookstores as well. But tonight is also another special moment. I'm going to be revealing my second book. Here's the package. Not open as yet, so I'm very excited. Can you see?
I think they can see, yes. I believe they can see.
So I'm going to be...
This is the first grand review on this one. I'm very excited.
I'm not sure if my scissors work, but let's see. Do you have a sharp scissors?
No, I don't have a scissors in my bag. Let's see. I think you should be able to tear it.
I think I can tear it, right?
Okay, yeah. There you go.
Oh, man. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too.
I'm so excited. Quiet strength, an empowering devotional and poetic journal about God, life, and love. This is the reveal. And just to show you a bit.
Oh, nice.
Just to show you a bit.
Okay.
Just to show you a bit, you can see.
Yeah.
Just to show you a bit.
Nice.
So the launch for this book is coming up on July 13th. That's Saturday, July 13th at Solid Waste Conference Room. And tickets are available at Mystique Photo, or you can also contact 662-2800. That's 662-2800. Quiet Strength. You can also find this on Amazon as well. And I forgot to mention, there is a special on Amazon on both books. Both books are on Amazon. And they're also on special for tonight. So you can go to Amazon and you can place your orders. And of course, please do leave a review. Thank you so much. And it was a pleasure being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Denise. I enjoyed the conversation a lot, and I think that I know quite a bit about marriage, even as a non-married person. But I appreciated the conversation, and I think the conversation also applied not just to marriages, but to, you know, long-term relationships, or people in relationship, people who are hoping to get married as well. So I appreciate your joining me tonight, and of course I appreciate your you know, the viewers and the listeners who are with me on Tuesday nights. This time it's been a good conversation, and I hope there was a lot that you all could take from this discussion and apply to your life. Remember, one key thing, or one call to action, one task that we gave you was to Google some things that you could do, especially as men, to build that intimacy and to create that connection and maintain that connection in your relationships. Don't take things for granted. Be intentional, and watch your relationships thrive. So this was another episode of Pleasure Pulse.
Sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry, viewers. I wanted to say special thanks to my husband, who is here supporting me tonight.
On the out right here, and I could see him listening and smiling, and I was like, wow, a cheerleader. Like, and that's what we want from our partners too, right?
Yes. So thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's okay.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
for all who are viewing on YouTube, or my family, my friends, love you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mrs. and Mr. Caesar, for joining me tonight, and thank you all for tuning in and for listening and watching us. And remember, this is a safe space, safe, inclusive space for everybody, where no topic is too big or too small. I will see you all next Tuesday. Have a pleasurable evening. Bye.